Hey everyone! Great to be back with you all again. I can't even begin to tell you how much of an impact that both Mega Man Legends and its sequel Mega Man Legends 2 used to have on me growing up. Seeing Mega Man make the jump into 3D was such an exciting thing to witness, even if the idea of every franchise jumping into 3D was pretty much the trend at the time. Even more surprising was the new original story that we were given. Instead of fighting master robots to reach and defeat Dr. Wily, this Mega Man happens to be a treasure hunter, or digger as the game calls it, with a setting unlike anything we had ever seen up to this point in Mega Man titles. But we're talking over 20 plus years ago now, and even when it came out, journalists and gamers cited multiple issues with the game's camera and controls. So, is it still as charming as we all remember? Strap in, and we'll see just how well Mega Man Legends for the PlayStation 1 holds up today! Released by Capcom in 1997, before receiving other ports for the Nintendo 64, PC, and PSP, Mega Man Legends is a 3D action-adventure and third-person shooter with a heavy focus on story and character development. Instead of following linear paths or specific levels, Legends has a wide-open 3D space with all kinds of areas to see and explore. Before getting into the main story details, let's talk a little about the setting that's been crafted here first. The world is mostly ocean, with small stretches of island left over. The original humans that once lived there are all gone, and have been replaced by artificial life forms that resemble humans, and can even reproduce. These people get their energy and technology from a source called quantum refractors, which are typically located in ancient ruins underground. The people who search for these and other treasures in said ruins are known as diggers. On top of these refractors, the diggers also set out to find a mysterious treasure, simply known as the Mother Lode, that is said to provide enough power to keep the world running forever. Enter Mega Man Walnut, a digger who works alongside Roll Casket, Mega Man's spotter and best friend, Barrel Casket, Roll's grandfather, and Data the monkey, to go out on these treasure hunts. After getting a large refractor from a dig, the party's ship called the Flutter begins to break down, causing them to crash land on the nearest island called Cadillacs Island. While working on a plan to fix the ship, the party also learns about the island and its history. On top of this, a group of pirates called the Bonds also arrive with the goal of trying to rob the island of any treasure they can find. It's up to Mega Man to explore the ruins, fix the ship, learn about the island's history and possible connections to the Mother Lode, and stop the pirates from taking over. As you can see, there's quite a bit going on here, and a much heavier focus on story than most games in the Mega Man series. The graphics are also worth noting. While the environments are pretty blocky and the basic ruins look a bit dull most of the time, the scenery both outside and inside the main city is actually quite nice, as there are a host of little details that give the game a lot of its personality. With that said, you'll also see little programming tricks like these flat trees giving you the illusion that you're looking at them in 3D. It is a bit annoying that you can't see all the way out in front of you, but this is the case for most 3D games of the eras, so it's hard to point a finger at this one game for it. Just something to note. The character models themselves are quite surprising. While you could say they too have a certain blockiness to them, they are very well animated and use a lot of different facial expressions to help the tone of each scene. Because of this and the game's general art style, I believe the look of the game holds up surprisingly well despite the environmental issues I mentioned earlier. The presentation is also complemented by the game's voice acting, which I'd say was above average for its time. Voices like Tronbon, Teaselbon, and the Servbots brought a smile to my face on more than one occasion. The music is also very catchy, though the amount of actual tracks in the game is a bit thin. Seriously, what person playing this game back in the late 90s didn't have this song stuck in their head for days? With all of these nice features, what could possibly go wrong? So let's talk about the gameplay. As was the case with a lot of games jumping into 3D at the time, the controls are a very mixed bag. They were a point of controversy back when the game first came out, and have not aged any better since then. The D-pad moves Mega Man up, down, left, and right, with the ability to strafe back and forth. With that said, the camera will not follow you, so you need to adjust it with the L1 and R1 buttons at all times. While it is workable, it will take a lot of adjusting for those playing it for the first time. Your square button is your shooter, triangle your special weapon if you have one equipped, circle is your interact button for talking with people and picking up items, and X is your jump button. Holding down R2 serves as a lock-on, but it also has some drawbacks. For one thing, there's no target reticle to tell you which enemy you're locking onto if there are multiple enemies around you. On top of that, you can't actually move while doing it. As you can imagine, this leads to multiple issues with fighting enemies that fly, but also run away from you, and it's even worse during missions like this one, where you have to prevent City Hall from being destroyed in time. Again, it's workable, but you have to go through a lot of hurdles to get the hang of it. You can also use this to adjust Mega Man's aim, but unless you're fighting an enemy that doesn't move, it's pretty pointless to use for more than a second. There's a few other abilities you can take advantage of, like dodge rolling, but I rarely found them useful unless I happened to be dodging an attack right at the moment it was going to hit me. Still, it was more helpful than not. Perhaps the most annoying thing about the game's combat is that you can easily get hit from a direction you can't actually see, even with the camera adjustments, and the attacks seem to range from small with little damage to suddenly huge amounts that can take out almost your entire life gauge without warning. I assume this was done to prevent you from exploring most of the game's ruins too early, but there's not a lot of warning about this beforehand, and it will likely confuse you when the majority of the game's progression system works a lot better in general. As you can see, it's all a little clunky to work with and will take some serious adjusting. Now you may be asking if I think there is any reason to make that adjustment. Why, yes I do. Almost every other element of this game is something I'd label as a positive. Although you don't have a huge amount of areas to explore outside of the ruins, since you are confined to one island for the entire game, the places you can explore are all chock full of personality and other factors that make each section feel very unique. While the north section of town has City Hall, a bank, and a police station where you can do multiple side quests, the west side has a museum where you can drop special items that you find to exhibit, and a TV station where you can enter into different kinds of minigames for money and prizes. In most cases, moving around this relatively small amount of space would lead to a lot of tedium and repetition, but I think the game manages to keep things engaging enough to the point where you never feel like you're just walking in circles the whole time. Unless you're lost, of course. The fast travel ability you get after Roll fixes a broken vehicle also helps with this greatly. There are two main factors that put this game in the above-average territory for me, and many others. The first is the charm and personality of all the game's characters, even outside of the main ones. This is one of those times where I'd argue that the game's villains are even more fun and engaging than the main characters themselves. This is especially true in the case of Tronbon, who, let's face it, is easily one of, if not the best character of the whole franchise.
What are you looking at?
But even when we go beyond the main characters, we see a huge burst of personality from everyone else in the town too. Over the course of the game, we hear about the food salesman's wife getting pregnant, the group of kids in town trying to build a clubhouse, with your help if you do the side quest, a little girl who won't be able to walk again without better funding at the hospital, or the painter who actually works at the local museum, but loves to spend her time making more art. I don't remember the last time I played a game that made me care about all of its side characters as much as its main ones. Some may contest the fact that everyone in the game is generally fair and very nice to each other, almost a little too much in places, even including the villains, but I like that about it. When I was younger and played this game back when it first released, I always dreamed of a world where everyone was friendly and trusting and treated each other with respect. You could argue that it makes some parts of the game feel less realistic, but it honestly just made me love the world crafted in this game all the more. You'll remember that I said there were two main factors that put this game on the above average scale, but I've only mentioned one so far. The second is the game's general structure. During the course of the game, you will flip between chunks of story and boss fights, while the other portion will consist of exploring ruins. Some of these are required to advance the game, and others are optional. In the required segments, you're usually looking for a large refractor, and have to go up against some type of boss fight in order to get it. Other items are obtained through chests and holes in walls. At first it'll feel like the game is throwing a gauntlet of boss fights at you, because it is, until that suddenly stops and you're free to explore just about everything else on the island. From this point, it becomes a much more balanced system of being able to dig and explore for more items, or advance the story at your own pace, and I think it works quite well. There's something really addicting about checking new rooms in each ruin, finding new pieces of random junk, and bringing it all back to Roll in the hopes she'll be able to craft them into a new item, part, or weapon. The variety and customization for these weapons and parts is also quite robust, and makes you think hard about how you'll want to balance each stat. Just hope you have money ready. There's also a lot of variety in both the main ruin designs and the gameplay scenarios that come with each major boss fight. One minute you're riding a boat and blasting everything that comes after you, The next you're fighting on top of the Flutter and overpowering an enemy airship that's over 3 times your size.
Mission complete!
And although the game is short, as I believe most gamers will be able to finish it in less than 8 hours, 10 at most with 100% completion, its story is well paced and never wears out its welcome. In fact, just as you get near the end and things appear to be winding down a bit, you're suddenly thrown a huge curveball and set of plot twists all at once that are almost hard to even digest since it's all chucked at you so quickly. After Mega Man enters 3 different sub-cities and gathers a special key in each, he opens a gate all the way at the bottom of the main gate, which was previously said to be locked by Eden. Once there, he finds a being known as Mega Man Juno, as we get a taste of Bach's Little Fugue in G minor in the background. He manages to identify our Mega Man as Mega Man Trigger, and everything starts to hit the fan shortly after.
That your reason for coming here is to purge the carbons that have overpropagated during the time I was inactive.
From what we're able to gather in this conversation, the humans on the island, known as Carbons by Juno, have grown too large in population and need to be destroyed or purged in order to begin a reinitialization process. This is when we learn that Eden is actually a giant space fortress capable of launching this attack. After Mega Man gets trapped and ends up being saved by the Bonds on account of them also not wanting to die, he catches up with Juno and the game's final battle begins. Without any kind of preparation, this fight can be a real challenge. Juno is extremely fast and throws everything in the kitchen sink at you with his dash attacks, lasers, and impact blasts. And after all that, he's got a second form that's even faster. Oh, and he has a new blast attack that is just plain cruel to witness. Once that's finally done, Juno is defeated, but not in time to save the island.
What should I do?
Or so we think.
Interrupt command. Priority command rerouted to Purifier First Class Mega Man Trigger. Under suspicion of malfunction, Bureaucratic Model 3rd Class Juno has been deactivated by Mega Man Trigger as per Ordinance 103. Mega Man Trigger hereby requests the indefinite postponement of the previous reinitialization order and the deletion of Bureaucratic Model Juno's backup data.
We now find out that not only did Data save the day by overriding the commands to destroy the humans, but actually knows all of the missing details of Mega Man's past that Mega Man had been trying so hard to remember. Unfortunately, he says that he can't reveal any of that info to him just yet, and will pass it on when the time comes. Ugh. After all this, we finally come to the game's ending. Just before leaving, you're actually given the chance and encouraged to go talk with everyone on the island that you previously encountered. It may seem like a small touch to some, but I thought this was a great way to go out, as it allowed you closure with just about everyone on the entire island, and really does make the whole thing feel complete by the time you embark. The final scene with the Bonds was also a perfect touch, because of course they stole the giant refractor. Mega Man Legends is an interesting discussion piece. It's got a host of gameplay issues that would normally render it unplayable to those looking for a smoother action platforming experience, and yet, it has one of the most passionate fan bases I've ever seen for such a small video game franchise, and there's good reason for that. It introduced a whole new setting and concept for those tired of the same old thing. It created a world focused on a great mix of combat and exploration, all while throwing in some nice little nods to the originals here and there. It gave us new characters like the Bonds, who immediately grew on us, and became fan favorites that we still hold in high regard even now. Most importantly, it gave us all a personality that is one of a kind. A world with exploration, treasures, and people that we'd all love to meet and talk with ourselves. Its gameplay may not stand the test of time, but everything else about it certainly will. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Have you played this classic game yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're feeling generous, please consider donating to my Patreon, where awesome people like Brandon, Erica, Thomas, Johan, Cielo, and Andrew all help to keep this channel alive. Until next time, when we review Mega Man Legends 2. See you then.